Hotep everyone, this is Bastmuttepta, and today I'm doing my Pagan blog project post on death. Death in relation to Egyptian spirituality is kind of an interesting thing. It's a common misconception that the ancient Egyptians were obsessed with death and with dying and with the dead in general. I guess the reason why this misconception is perpetuated is because of just the way that people were preserved, things that were buried with people. Well, not necessarily buried because they weren't really buried, I guess, but things that were entombed with people. The writings, all of the various writings that were on the inside of the tombs. The fact that there is a very, very popular text found with these people called the Book of the Dead, which it isn't even really called the Book of the Dead. It just seems to have been the common name that has been ascribed to it. The Book of the Dead is not actually one singular book, and it's not even really a book. What the Book of the Dead was a papyrus that was basically commissioned by a person when they were still living. So they would go to a member of the priesthood and they would ask for this papyrus, and depending on how much someone could afford, that would basically dictate what kinds of spells and how many spells they would get in this papyrus, because the Book of the Dead is a book of spells and utterances. It's not something you just straight read like it's a nice long story. I mean, generally it does follow a chronology just because each spell is designed to get you through a specific trial or tribulation that occurs once you pass on. Because in Egyptian belief, the Duat, which is the otherworld, the underworld, the, other plane of existence, is not the safest place, at least not until you get where you're supposed to be going. So the idea is that they would have this papyrus that they would commission, and they would try and get all these spells collected to, keep them safe when they die. And it was usually some really extravagant cost, something that most people would not be able to afford. So there's actually various varieties of this papyrus that people would have been buried with. But the Book of the Dead actually comes from the papyrus that was housed with a certain man, and his name was Ani. So the papyrus of Ani is the Book of the Dead as we know it. So there's really no obsession with death. It was more that people did not want to really die. They were more so obsessed with life. And the idea is that when you got to where you were going in the underworld, or the Duat, it would be pretty much exactly like life, except without sickness, without illness. Basically like what you consider a perfect version of what we live right now. So the one thing that would decide whether a person would be able to progress on to this perfect place was the judgment, because we do believe in a judgment. Whether you consider it literal or metaphorical, I mean, is, I guess, left up to interpretation. But the idea is that when you pass through all of these trials and tribulations in the Duat, that you would end up in the Hall of Two Truths. And in the Hall of Two Truths, you would see a couple different divinities, one of which being Ma'at, also Yinepu or Anubis, also Heru or Horus, I think Djehuti as well. I'm not quite positive. My cat's knocking things over. I don't have it memorized, but I'm pretty sure yes. He was there because he was there to write down exactly what was going on. So you have them and you have this giant scale. Again, whether it's actually a giant scale or not, this is just the traditional scene. And the idea is that there would be a weighing of the heart, and your heart would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at. Ma'at being the embodiment of truth and justice and basically everything that is right and good in the world. So, in this weighing, the idea was that you would want your heart to be in perfect balance with the feather of Ma'at. There's this idea that people think that if your heart is lighter, that would allow you to pass. But in truth, if your heart is too heavy, which is too heavy with wrongdoing and just genuine evil, that's bad. Now, if you're also too lighthearted, that can also be a bad thing. You're not showing enough seriousness, you're not showing enough care. That can be bad in and of itself. So the idea was that you wanted to be in balance. You wanted to be in harmony, in rhythm with Ma'at. So, and generally what we believe is that it's not like a literal heart. It's not like your heart gets ripped out of your body and it's judged on a scale. It's more a representation of your soul. And the two major parts of the soul to consider here are the Ba and the Ka. So the Ba is considered to be your eternal soul. It's the one that follows you throughout your life or lives, if you believe in reincarnation. It's the one that, always exists, is not destroyed. It's you at your very core. Your Ba is pretty much perfect. And it's not something that, you actively really know that you have. It's not like you can feel that you have your Ba. The active part of your soul, the one that, is really, really tied to you in this life, is your Ka. Your Ka is basically your representation of yourself. It's who you are right now. It's, your personality, the person you've become in this life. So it's your Ka that really gets judged. And the idea is that if your Ka does not pass the judgment, which means that you had to have done something pretty nasty, super nasty. People think that, they're so worried about, not making it into heaven in their particular belief system or whatnot. It's really, really hard to fail the Kemetic judgment. It's very, very difficult. You had to have been doing something genuinely crazy nasty in order to fail the Kemetic judgment. So the idea is that most people are just fine, and most people pass through. If you fail, the idea is that your soul would be destroyed. So we have this nifty little, not necessarily a god, but Najeri is I guess the term that we would use. Demon, I guess you could call it. Not really evil, because she serves her purpose. It's not like it's, evil, but we call this being Ammit. And Ammit is basically a combination of a couple other animals, like a crocodile and a hippo and some other creatures. It's basically a mishmash of creatures. And the idea is that if you did not pass judgment, if you failed, then your soul would be devoured by this creature. And that basically means that your Ka would cease to exist. Now your Ba's still around. It's, eternal. And, based upon what you believe, either the Ba wanders around, does whatever the heck it wants, Or if you believe in reincarnation, the idea would be that your Ba, sorry, my computer's trying to shut down, is that your Ba would unite with a new Ka, and, you would start another life. So the Ba is here just watching the judgment. Ba doesn't get judged, it's just like, watching and wondering what's going to go on. So if you were to pass the judgment, which is the most likely scenario, the idea would be is that you would go on to, I guess what you would call Field of Reeds, or Paradise, or Heaven. Again, it's a place just like Earth, just like what we have right now. It's just a perfect place to be. No death, no disease, no illness. Just perfect. So, this is where, the Ka would become one of the Aku. And the Aku, as I mentioned before, is the blessed dead. If you didn't catch the video I did, I think my first video? My first or my second video for the Pagan blog project was on the Aku. But this is where you would go, and you would become one of the Aku. You could, keep an eye on your family that was still living, help them through their trials and tribulations. So that's basically where you would go. So I guess the idea is just that we're really not a whole lot different from other faiths. I mean, there is an afterlife that we do believe in, but we're not really as concerned with like what is actually going to happen, just because it's not like we've had someone go there and then come back and tell us exactly what it is or whatever. It's not like any of us have actually been there. So we're much more concerned with, preserving Ma'at in this life, and bringing Ma'at to the world, and, doing good deeds here. And what happens afterwards, I mean, besides that, it's kind of out of our control. I mean, we don't have a choice, at least not until we get there. So why worry about it? Why fear it? Why, obsess over it? It doesn't do any good. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's it. I might talk a little bit more about this in my next video next week. I'm not sure. Again, this one I wasn't really prepared either. I just kind of, whatever comes out. But anyway, I hope that gave a little bit of an idea on how we view death. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. If not, I will see you next week. Snap tea.